So my name's Danny Wareham. I'm an organisational psychologist, a psychometrician. I specialise in personality, culture, social dynamics. So I apologise that you're all going to leave here this evening with an urge to cluck like chickens. That's all been implanted in you already. I've been in contact centres for, I'd say, more than 25 years. I was a child when they built a call centre around me. So I'm well aware of how great contact centres are and also what the pain points can be as well. And this evening is all about how do we unlock that contact centre excellence? How do we get rid of some of those pains and how do we fly in what is a really tough time at the moment? And I'm going to talk to you specifically about engagement in a hybrid world. So as we start, first thing to keep in mind is the things that got us here, the things that have made us successful in the past, are not necessarily the things that are going to work in the future. And I should address the elephant in the room before we start. Hybrid is here to stay. You might not know that if you've been reading newspapers or LinkedIn or anything recently, but unfortunately that genie is out of the bottle. Before COVID, if an advisor came to you and said, "Can I work from my camper van on Newquay Beach?" you'd say, "Hell no, that's ridiculous." And then COVID came along and it forced us to innovate and understand that there are things that we can do. That then means that people today are being more questioning about, well, what is the art of the possible? What else can we do? And if we don't find ways to be flexible, then since COVID, 4 million employees, which is about 12% of the population, working population, have already changed roles because of a lack of flexible working. 2 million of that is in the last 2023. Get my words out. So it's an accelerating issue. And of the people that are working remote already, 3/4 of them would change their employer if the current flexible working options and flexible approaches were changed. Unfortunately, some people haven't got this memo. Just in the last fortnight, JP Morgan and L'Oreal have come out with statements about remote workers. Apparently, remote working affects the character of your business. That's a bit harsh. And Nicholas Hieronymus from L'Oreal this week said, or last week rather, said that remote workers have no attachment, they have no passion, they have no creativity, which is slightly ironic given that he's responsible for 62 offices. He technically is a remote worker, he is floating around. Does he mean he's got no passion? Or is that just an othering statement, as us psychologists would say? The challenge is that there is a kernel of truth behind what JP Morgan and L'Oreal are thinking, though. What they really mean is we don't trust our people. And it's that might have an element of truth in it. Our studies show that people are more productive. When they're engaged, they are more productive when they're remote. They have fewer absences and all the other benefits that purposely engaged employees bring. But the trust factor is potentially an issue. Trust is affected by physical distance. Studies have found that if you think of it in an evolutionary term, people that are physically close to us, we must trust. We wouldn't let them around our campfire unless we knew that we weren't going to get shanked. Similarly, we wouldn't have people around our campfire, or the fact they are around our campfire encourages us to trust them. And the further people are physically from us, the less likely we are to trust them. In fact, it's tied to eyesight. So once you get up towards sort of 20 meters where you can't make out non-verbal cues, where you can't tell the expressions on people's faces, it becomes much less likely to be able to trust them. If you're interested in this kind of psyche, nerdy type stuff, there's also a fantastic study that shows that you can increase the level of trust by showing remote workers a photograph of an empty desk that they used to sit next to. Very strange. Trust also forms part of social capital. And social capital is a bit like, it's the currency that your business success runs on. And what I mean by that is that your organizations have targets, benchmarks, and you will have agreed these with maybe external stakeholders and shareholders. You may have gone to market and said, this is our earnings per share, our EBITDA, or to your angel investors. But you've set, this is what we're going to perform at. Real performance is above that. It's that discretionary effort that comes from the goodwill of your people. And that's what social capital is spent on. It's built by, do I trust the people around me? Are the structural ties around me, things like our processes, our communications, our physical location, are they set, and do they help encourage me to feel like I belong? And also tolerance. So are we open with the people around us? If you're in the same office with lots of different people, then you've got more experience of intimate interactions, if that's the right phrase, compared to if you only see the same 10 or 15 faces every day on Zoom. But again, Nicholas hasn't got the message about this. It's not about trust. It's about button stop working. It's about meeting people. That's what it is. It's very, very, double very important that people work together. Right? Because otherwise they don't have a chance to meet people, and this serendipity of office interactions, which is a load of rubbish. It's not serendipitous. In the old world, I had to be in a specific building at a specific time, often at a specific desk, surrounded by specific people. So it's not serendipitous or lucky that I'm going to bump into the same kind of people and have conversations. It's just workforce planning and it's just WFM. So no, Nicholas, I disagree. And not only do I disagree, Merv disagrees. And Merv's word is gospel. So Melvin is a lovely, lovely man. I know, because he's married to my mum. But he does have one hang-up that I can't get behind. This is a grown man who has a Liverpool Football Club duvet set for his marital bed with my mother. He's got a flag on his garden shed. He gets dressed up to watch the games. He cannot have a conversation without something about You'll Never Walk Alone coming into it, right? He's never been to Anfield. Never been. The first time he ever went, he was 62 years old. I took him on a tour of the stadium. He's never seen a game at Anfield. This is the same guy that got angry with me because last year when there was the heat wave, I said to him, oh, Merv, it's the high 90s across the country, except in Anfield where they're stuck in the 80s. And he went proper off at me. Right? He's never been to the venue. He's never been to the work location. Does that make him less of a fan? Does it make him less passionate? Does it make him less engaged in what his team are doing? No, of course not. Culture is made up, and engagement are made up of lots of different facets. Whether it's the rituals and the things that happen, or the way we talk and the language we use. I'm not going to go into all of this, but if you want to chat about it afterwards, get me a beer and I'll chew your ear off. But the one thing that I will talk about is what we call the cultural paradigm, the underlying beliefs. And in any social group and any organization, they manifest in two ways. On the organizational side, it's why we're here. What do we contribute to the world? Where are we heading? What difference do we make? Why do we exist? What's our vision? And on an individual level, they manifest in how do I fit in? How do I contribute? Do I belong? Am I seen? In all organizations, this is important. But when we're in a hybrid world, we lose the context and the nuance of all those little conversations that go on around the water cooler or around the pod that help us understand what we're about whilst we're working here. So in a hybrid world, it becomes even more paramount, it becomes more important. You can't just talk about it once a year at an AGM. This is our vision. Let's talk about it at a quarterly all hands. Yeah? We need to know, how do I contribute? Why are we here? And it needs to be woven, that vision needs to be woven through everything that we do in every aspect of our operations and our organization. It needs to be clear. It can't be something that's really abstract and wishy-washy, and I'll come on to that in a moment. And it can't be just a one-stop shop. It can't be once a year we're going to talk about the values on our wall and where we're heading. It needs to be communicated and walked every day in every interaction through your business. The second reason is you need to know, how do I contribute? What does it actually mean? Liverpool's mission has nothing to do with football. You will not find football mentioned anywhere in their vision. Their vision is all about how do we give back to the community in which we were founded and how do we improve social mobility in the area that we operate in, because Anfield is quite a deprived area. Yeah? There are 15,000 employees of Liverpool Football Club around the world. Only 15 of them get to kick that bag of wind around. So that vision statement of how do I contribute to the community in which we operate needs to be translated down so that Mo Salah knows what his role in that organisation is, and so does Dave, who's dealing with your complaint about Outlook not working. What's in it for me? How does it translate for me? How do I contribute? And the third area is, how do I contribute? Thank you. Because it's all very well and good saying this is our vision and this is where we're heading and here's our processes and so on, but there's so much that goes on in your world, both in your personal world and in organisation, that is not written. It's just how we do things. And sometimes that can get in our way too. Apologies, the screen behind just did something funky and distracted me. So how do I determine how I can contribute? What's getting in the way? And I'm sure you've all been in situations where you could have said something, you could have stuck your head above the parapet, but it just didn't feel quite right. It's not the right time, it's not how we do things here. Are we inadvertently doing that for our organisations? And how do I know? Because these things aren't written down. I'm sat on my own in my bedroom or at my kitchen table. How do I know what those kind of unwritten rules are? Or do I just find myself kind of ostracised, not really knowing why I'm here, how I contribute, what these unwritten rules are that have found me kind of kicked to the curb? And that part is influenced by things like your reward and recognition, your communications. What messages are you sending? So remember, what got us here, however successful we've been in the past, is not necessarily what's going to make us successful in the future. We need to be more clear about why do we exist? What is that North Star? Where are we heading? And then what are we doing to help us towards that? And what are we removing that's kind of slowing our progress and hindering? Once we know what that North Star is, what that vision is, and we're able to weave it through what we do, we can totally change and reimagine the future. Now, this is my kind of favourite bit because I'm an idealist. Has anybody heard of Automatic? Nope. Automatic, they're a beast. They're a big company. They have 10,000 employees, 77 countries, nearly 100 languages spoken. They're also recognised and certified as a most loved place to work, which is kind of like the global Sunday Times Top 100. Yeah? They are responsible for WordPress. They're the company that owns WordPress, WooCommerce. They do all of their interviews via SMS. No face-to-face, no video calls, nothing. All SMS. And whenever I tell people this, there's always a few people in the room that say, how do they know it's the interviewer that's turned up? How do they know it's not ChatGPT that's replying? Their North Star, their mission, is to provide platforms to allow you to be the best possible writer and to communicate your dreams to others. In the old world, they might interview you face-to-face or have group sessions where you all build spaghetti bridges or whatever you want to do. Then you get the job, you're on board, and now I've got to retrain you to find that you've got the core attributes for the role that we actually want you to do, which is communicate succinctly, in writing, potentially in multiple languages, or at least languages that can be translated nice and easily. Why not just change the way that you attract your talent so that it matches what you're trying to achieve in the first place? We're a writing company that communicates in writing. Why don't we do our interviews in writing? That makes much more sense than, well, it might be some dodgy guy in his bedroom using ChatGPT to bypass our interview technique. Another company I admire is SF Recruitment. So this is a recruitment agency in Telford. They're about 60 heads, so a little bit smaller. And they've tripled their turnover in 2 years since a management buyout. They brought on a whole female-only leadership team, and they've won lots and lots of awards. Now, they work in recruitment, and they have no job descriptions for any of their people. What they did was they went round to all of their people and went, Matt, when are you at your best? What do you love doing? What can you do more? Okay, can't see your name. Daniel, when are you at your best? And they created a bespoke job role for you and a bespoke job role for you, which then meant that they had to change their entire talent attraction process because you're playing your position. You're a striker. You're playing your position. You're a goalkeeper. We need to go and hire some wing players that love playing on the wing. And that's what they did. So they changed the way they recruit. But if you play that through, that also changes the way we think of succession planning. The traditional kind of vertical advisor to lead advisor to team leader to ops manager doesn't work in that scenario. But what does work is you're really good and you love relationship building and networking. Well, actually over here in this area of our business, we need somebody who's experienced at that to help build a completely different area. So it changes what good looks like, and it means you're playing to your strengths. So what got us here won't necessarily get us there, but the future doesn't mean we have to just lift and shift what we did before and wedge it into Zoom or wedge it into tech somewhere else. We can completely reinvent the future. So we know where we're going. Our brains are thinking, what can we do differently in the future? How can we align what we do with what we're trying to achieve? Now we need to bring our people on board with it as well. Yeah? So how do you reignite that belonging? How do you get the collaboration and the agility? To go back to the start, we talked about social capital. If we're going to create a shared future, one rather than one that's simply pushed on our organization, then we need to earn that social capital back so that people are able to say, this is what I'm great at, and I'm not actually very strong at this, and I don't really enjoy it. We also need to set the structures around that people are able to do that sort of thing. Because there's a great report by Workday that found that 85% of the skills you have as an individual are not used in your day job. You've got a van full of tools, and you're only allowed to use 10 to 15% of them. There's loads of other stuff you can do. Some of you might not know this, but I used to be a web and graphic designer. Database Dan was not just a moniker. If you need me to write in SQL or code access databases in VBA and get them to talk to Outlook and all that sort of stuff, I can do that. I'm also a really good cook. None of those things I get to use in my day job. But if I was in an organization that required those things, would they know? Would I have permission to use them? Or would it be, no, this is your job description. This is what you do. Those job descriptions and the way we attract talent can then restrict our business because you've got 85% of the tools in your van for every individual. There are things they can contribute to your business that we're just not set up for them to use. Any Latin speakers in the room? No? There's normally one guy at the back in a toga. Whenever I'm stuck for what to do with words, I always look at their root. My consultancy is called Firgun, which means to take genuine, sincere delight and joy in somebody else's accomplishments. And it really epitomizes what I love. It's that warm, fuzzy feeling when you see something nice happen. Does anybody know what the root of agent is? No? Is that a hand up from the cameraman? So agent came from the Latin agere, which means to do, via medieval English, which was technically French. And agentia means to have the capacity and permission to act. It's the same root as agency. If you give agency to somebody, you're giving them permission to do stuff. It's a bit of a rhetorical question, but how many of your processes, policies, and approaches in your businesses today take away agency from your agents? They've got a van full of tools. We've got businesses that are still trying to do what we did in the old world that might be resilient to move into the new world. And we've got lots of structures and governance and things that take away potential value that our people can add. So how do we create this shared future? I'm sure the battery's going on this. There's 3 things to focus on for me. There's lots of things you can focus on. They're bespoke to your organization. But if I was to start with 3, these are the 3 that I'd go for. So the first is recognition. What do we recognize? In the old world, we would recognize results. What's your NPS? What's your AHT? What's your conversion rate? Right? But often you're not in control of the result. What we really want to do is recognize the behavior. And if I give you an example, I'll use a sales example. You've got a senior sales manager who's working on a client pitch. and for some reason they have to take a leave of absence, they're poorly. So somebody junior on the team steps up and they research the client, they build the pitch deck, they even go to the client's place and pitch to them. And the client decides at the end of the day, I'm not going to go with them, I've gone with somebody else. Do we recognize that person? Or does it show up that, oh, it's a lesser conversion, you pitched into somebody who didn't do it? In the old world, that's certainly the case. But what you really want to do is recognize that those are the right behaviors. Even if they aren't successful now, keep doing those things. In contact centers, I see this a lot with agents that have stepped up that might be seconded as team leaders, and their performance is not as good as tenured, experienced team leaders. So we leave them in role, treading water. Historically, we're not great at investing in those agent transitions to team leader, and when they haven't performed after 6 months, we advertise the job. But they're showing the right behaviors. Yes, we can work on the result through coaching and mentoring and things, but you don't want to cut those behaviors off and leave somebody disengaged. Let's recognize the behaviors rather than the results. Second is tech is an enabler. We often see tech as a solution. It's not a solution. A solution has to know what you want. We don't always know what we want. But there are things that tech can do that is better than what we have before. And what I mean by this is, if you take a team meeting in our contact centers pre-COVID, okay, you would have 10 people in the room. You might have a couple of people in there that are reflectors, that don't necessarily engage because they think to speak. They take the information in, they make sense of it. It's a very introverted trait. Whereas you may have lots of extroverts in the room that speak to think. So the first thing out their mouth is usually rubbish because they're just kind of mulling it over. In the West, we tend to favor more extrovert environments, so you tend to get those people take over meetings. Okay? And you've got people that they're not disengaged, but they may come to you after the meeting to say, I just wanted to say, I didn't want to say anything in the room, but this is what I think. Right? Do we take that meeting and put it into Zoom? Can you have your camera on? You're obviously disengaged if your camera's off. That's just lifting and shifting what we did before, rather than all the benefits that platforms like Zoom can bring. The chat at the side that allow those people that are reflectors and introverts to be able to ask for advice or say something else. The AI that's built into Teams that will record the messages and give you a summary of what the agenda of the thing was. So don't just lift and shift and how can we make what we do today work in a different environment. We can unleash some of the things that our tech allows us to do. And it's the same with equality and equity in terms of tech. Equality is everybody's got the same. So you have a team meeting, 10 people, 4 of them are in the office, 6 of them at home. Do we have those 4 people in a room on VC, all on one little camera, and everybody else on their own? That's a different experience. It's not equal because those people that are in the room together, they'll have the preamble before the meeting, they've got all the non-verbal stuff that goes on within the meeting, so you've unintentionally created a tribal split within an existing team. One of the solutions might be the people that are in the office join independently on their Zoom. But do we even think that? And that's kind of the moral of the story is, do we just do what we've always done? Because what got us here isn't necessarily what's going to get us there. And the third one is education, not training. Contact centers, we love a bit of training. Training is stuff I need to do my job. Right? Think of Lewis Hamilton. I know he's in the news today, if everybody's seen. Lewis Hamilton's job is get that car round that track as fast as you can, mate. Okay? So he trains on that. He knows every inch of every track. He knows how his car works. He works on his reflexes. He works out so his neck muscles are strong. That's all stuff to make him better at his job today. Education is when he goes into the pits and watches how they assemble the gear ratios in the gearbox. It's when he goes drift driving in the snow in Norway. He'll never race in snow in a proper race. But that wider, this is what driving is about as a vision. That wider education of other seemingly unrelated things gives him more experience to pull on when the race doesn't go to plan. When there's a little slippy patch on the road, he can draw on that drift stuff. In a contact center context, we tend to focus on training. Come in, on board, how does the CRM work? How does this work? These are our processes, this is what time your lunch is, right, off you fly. And then the coaching tends to be around those job-specific skills. Actually, there's much more that can be learned if you're planning on this is what we want to be famous for, and they've got 85% of their tools left on the van. If they know, well, actually, I know that this area of the business works in this way, or actually this is a pain point over there, they're able to rummage in their van a little bit more easier when they know the bigger picture. So education becomes far more important than training in a hybrid world. So we know where we're heading, we've got some imagination, we've re-engaged our people. Now how do we release that? I'll go back to the start. Hybrid is here to stay. Whether you like it or not, whether you're a fan of it or not, it doesn't matter, because people will vote with their feet. So we have a choice. We can ignore it, we can fight against it, thanks L'Oreal, or you can embrace the opportunities it actually brings rather than trying to simply substitute what we've done in the past for today. But again, whether we want to or not, employees are already starting to say, I'll go and test somewhere else. When it comes to reimagining the future, purpose becomes paramount. Why are we here? So share that direction, share that vision. What do they contribute towards? Share it frequently and share it loudly. Don't leave any ambiguity of, we want to be number one, because what does that mean for Benny who's sweeping? What does that mean for Sarah who's working in accounts? Spell out the what's in it for me. That then means that we need to also change how we work with our people, because we might not want them to contribute just what's in their job spec. What else do they have in the van? And then what do we have as an organisation that's maybe stopping them going to the van? Do we need to look at specifically what our things like recognition are encouraging? I'll give you an off-the-record one in here. I worked for a telecoms company that had a sales process where the team leader had the target for their team. And if somebody went off in their team, tough, the team leader carried the target. So the commercial team made a decision that seemed like the right decision. You only carry the first 2 days of absence. If the advisor's off, we'll reduce your target. That then encouraged a tranche of team leaders that when they had somebody off for a day, would ring them up and go, oh, take the rest of the week off. That then flowed through in our reward and recognition programs, and they got paid more, and they got recognised at end-of-year awards. So all the managers that didn't exhibit that behaviour started looking at, this is how we get things done around here, and you see that behaviour spread elsewhere. But on paper, we're smashing our targets. So what processes do you have that are currently getting you on your way and encouraging behaviours that aren't heading towards that North Star? What's your communication? Old world is real time, synchronous. You speak to somebody, you tap them on the shoulder, can I have a chat? Maybe async is a better way in the future. But it's strategically consider what's going to work for you, rather than just, let's copy what we've always done. And your leadership. If you have a command and control culture that's very much about presenteeism, watching, measuring, tick boxes, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that if it helps you achieve your goals. The question is, does it help you achieve your goals, or do you need to flex your management and leadership styles within your operations? If you're ever in doubt, look at that North Star. Why are we here? Or remember, happy bees make tasty honey. If you have the right people in the right roles, with the right culture, support and leadership, your performance is a side effect. But you need to know what that right is first. Brom. Thank you. So the plan for the day, I know you were going to clap then. So the plan for the day, if you want to ask questions after each speaker, you can, but actually some of our content is going to overlap, so it might be better to have a Q&A at the end. The deciding factor might be, we're going to serve some drinks now.